You're listening to Innovators, the podcast from Harris Search Associates, where we speak with global leaders in education, research, engineering, and the health sciences, and ask them to share lessons learned as they continue to advance the frontiers of innovation and discovery. Today's podcast will be led by Rick Skinner, Senior Consultant.
Michael Lomax is very good at his job, and his jobs are several. One encyclopedia entry may have best captured his talents and careers, calling him a versatile man who appears to have been groomed early on for the life he led in later years. He is perhaps best known nationally as president of the United Negro College Fund, a post from which Dr. Lomax has served since 2004. He has raised more than $3 billion and made UNCF the largest private provider of financial aid to Black college students. And he has been a powerful advocate for the role of education in the lives of African Americans and the role of historically Black colleges and universities. But Dr. Lomax is also the founder of the National Black Arts Festival, the first African American to chair a major county government of Atlanta's Fulton County, and a founding member of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. He served as president of Dillard University for 7 years and is acknowledged to have transformed that institution through his leadership. He serves on boards of KIPP Schools Foundation, Teach for America, the Carter Center, Emory University, and the United Way of America. Dr. Lomax earned his undergraduate degree from Morehouse College, a Master of Arts in Literature from Columbia University, and a doctorate from Emory. He was a faculty member at two of his alma maters, Morehouse and Emory, and taught at Spelman College, Georgia Tech, and the University of Georgia. It's been said of Michael Lomax that he was ready to lead from a very early age and only got better with time. Welcome to Innovators, Dr. Lomax.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's good to be with you.
The death of George Floyd seems to some people to have been an historical inflection point in America's struggle with matters of race and particularly with the status of Black Americans. And this view, and in fact, on the basis of polling, a majority of white Americans acknowledges the systemic denial of rights and privileges they enjoy compared to those their Black brothers and sisters have. This, it would appear, could be the starting point for redressing 400 years of discrimination, dehumanization, and degradation. At last, perhaps America and Americans are prepared to deal forthrightly with the wrongs done Black citizens. You enjoy a distinctive perspective on this point in time. You're an educator, you've presided over an historically Black university, and you've helped raise millions of dollars to support HBCUs. And if I may say so, you are of an age that affords you nearly 3 entire generations over which you can recall moments not unlike this one, a time, notwithstanding a raging pandemic, I admit, a devastated economy, and a new multiracial generation of mostly young, but not all young Americans, who appear to be determined to seize the moment and bring about substantive and perhaps lasting change to the lives of America's Black citizens. But is this really such a moment? Is there reason to believe this is different from other points in time when positive and meaningful change could take place?
Well, I think the jury's still out as to whether this is a moment or it's a beginning of a movement, whether it's a sort of blip or it's a real significant time of change. In one sense, I am older, yes. I grew up in Los Angeles. My parents owned a newspaper. Maybe we were just more aware than others, but the issue of relationships with the Black community were front and center in Los Angeles in the 1940s when I was born, in the 1950s when I was growing up. I came south in the 1960s, so I was seeing, the brutalization of African Americans under segregation and the civil rights movement. I think in my life, race has always been a prominent issue. It's always been something that we've been, as a people, working to achieve our freedom, our rights as American citizens, the respect which we believe we are due. I think for me, this may be a changing point. I'm not certain that it is, because at the same time that you're seeing so many strongly held views that are supportive of African Americans, you're also seeing a lot of opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that this is a different day than it was in the 1950s and the 1940s and even the 1960s. But I don't feel as secure in the rights that I have today. And I do feel that as much as racial attitudes have changed, a lot of old racial attitudes are being revealed. And so I want to be more optimistic. I tend to be a glass half full, not a glass half empty person. But maybe it is because I'm older, and maybe it's because I was dealing with when I was in college and I was a young professional and I'm fighting for my rights. But today, because I have children and grandchildren, and I'm seeing that the world is very problematic for them, and the future very problematic, I'm concerned.
Let's go on to sort of explore this just a little bit further, because I think your caution is certainly merited based by the record. So let's just use an example of today. The recent shift in public opinion about racism and its effect on Black Americans prompted a frenzy almost by corporations, nonprofits, members associations to make clear their respective commitments to end racism in their operations. You might think this could lead to more prominent representation of Blacks in those organizations. But like you, I've watched over the last half century since affirmative action and equal employment opportunity went into effect, and that record does not encourage confidence that those commitments that have been made of late will be fulfilled. In higher education, even good faith efforts ran up against a culture and a system of employment based on academic meritocracy, such that there were insufficient numbers of qualified Black persons whose degrees were from universities and colleges of sufficient prestige in many cases, whose records of publication and general scholarship did not approach those of their white peers, or who had enough experience in academia. And the result? Well, you and I both know that. Some change took place and some Blacks were hired to faculties of America's best institutions. But the degree of change and the numbers hired were few. So in light of that record, are you optimistic that the professoriate here in the U.S. will reflect to any degree the proportions of Black Americans in the general population, or perhaps more optimistically in student enrollments?
Education has been very important for African Americans. It's something that we have always recognized we would have to fight for, but it's so inextricably connected to economic, your economic place in society. It's so inextricably tied to your civic place. It's so inextricably tied to the quality of your life. And it's been denied. Education opportunity has been denied. It's almost been a kind of, a really perverse denial. A lot of people will say, well, HBCUs and Black colleges, they're not very good. They really don't do very much. We shouldn't support them. And then they'll turn right back around and say, Black people are not as well educated. They're not prepared. So we shouldn't admit them to our institution. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is saying, we don't want you to have your quote unquote inferior institutions, but we don't want to let you into our superior institutions. We want you without institutions.
So you're caught in a kind of nowhere land.
Well, you're not caught in if you actually accept those arguments, you are.
Yes.
But if you're If you don't accept them, then you continue to fight for what you believe. I believe education is extraordinarily important. I believe that Black people have been denied it, and a lot of questionable ways we've had it denied us. I grew up in California, which was, a place that was considered a mecca for Black people in the mid 20th century. Yet I went to integrated public schools, but there was still, residential segregation. There were examinations that were given, and there was tracking, and those were used as ways of maintaining white privilege and ensuring that Black people were separated. Now, at the end of the day, all those state examinations, those examinations which were either both proficiency examinations, or they were to tell you whether you had the aptitude examination, they were used to limit opportunities. I remember being given exams and being said, well, you're not quite good enough to do the most advanced courses. And we had to fight to get me in the most advanced courses. I get in the most advanced courses and I do very well. You're not good enough to go to an Ivy League school. And I didn't go to one for undergraduate, but I went to Columbia University for my graduate program, and Emory University. Every time I would go to these places and, we're letting you in, then I would get there and I would do just as well as I did everywhere else, because I was capable of doing that and I was highly motivated. So I think a lot of the obstacles really go back to the fact that there's this tribalism. White people want to be with white people, Black people are often excluded from that. I think most of the justifications for those are spurious and questionable. And education is not zero sum. It's an elastic opportunity. And so what I'm fighting for is equality of opportunity. I'm fighting for giving people the chance to get as much education as they are prepared to work to achieve. And I'm also doing it with the recognition that learning and a sense of well-being and a sense of affirmation about your identity are all inextricably tied together. If you go to an institution where you don't have a sense of well-being and where you are not affirmed for who you are, you're not going to learn as well. And that's why I have fought to make sure that institutions that serve Black students, wherever they are on the arc of educational achievement, that they are affirmative and nurturing environments. And then what I say to those students is work very hard to achieve it. And I think that is having some impact, but not as much as it should have, because people continue to put obstacles in the way of Black children and Black students and Black learners. Financial obstacles, quality program obstacles, and they have nothing to do with their capability. They just have something to do with the color of their skin, their economic status. So yeah, I am, if not pessimistic, I think I am not going to take my eye off of the fact that we have to continue to keep fighting for what we want. And I don't mean, being violent or pugnacious. I mean just being determined and persistent. And what I say to my grandchildren, who live a better life than I did growing up, I say to them is that nothing is going to be given to you. You've got to fight for it, and you're going to have to continue to fight to hold on to what we've achieved.
I have to relate something, since we're in the search business. We go to a lot of university campuses, and the search committee's formed, and there are 15 people or whatever, and then there are 2 Black people. Most of the case, too often, there are assistant professors who have everything being asked of them. I remember one young woman told me one time, this is the 3rd search committee I've been on in the 2 years I've been here. Now, you and I both know that search committees are not paltry things that don't take up a lot of your time. So it was interesting to me that in order to bring a Black perspective to hiring, they were actually burning up the very person that they needed most to help them. So your point's well taken.
But I would just say this: And particularly in this economy that we're living in today, where you are seeing more people of color pushing hard and getting to positions that we've been excluded from in the past. And frankly, there is a backlash.
Yes.
There's hostility toward that. I have one of my daughters is out in California. Well, she's on the West Coast. She's in a major corporation. She is a technical engineer. She designs software.
Someone in the family had to make money. Is that what you're telling me?
Someone in the family. You know, she fights every day the culture of the technology environment, which says women of color. This is, what I've just said to her is, if this is what you want to do and you believe you're qualified to do it, and every indication is that you are, you're going to have to fight for it. It's not going to be given to you.
Touche. Let's turn to your day job. As president of UNCF, your mission is to raise money for HBCUs. But some of these institutions, many of them we've done work for, have significant white and international significant portions of international students enrolled, as well as substantial numbers of faculty who are not Black. The argument has been that those institutions, by dint of historical mission and the fact that the great majority of students enrolled in them are Black, produce a significant portion of Black professionals who then go on to serve both Black, white, everything in America. So how do you respond to the argument that however valuable that role may be, it nevertheless perpetuates the self-separation of Blacks and thus undermines the integrationist rationale for their support?
Well, I mean, I just think those are bogus arguments. We have a number of, we have had a very diverse and powerfully diverse sort of landscape of higher education institutions. We've had religious institutions, both Christian and Jewish. We've had women's institutions. We've had all male institutions. We've had a range, public and private. I think that provides an array of choices for what we call historically Black colleges. Well, they were created at a time when there was forced separation.
Exactly.
Yet from their very beginning, these institutions have had integrated administrations, integrated faculty, integrated staff. What they haven't been permitted by law to have always was integrated students.
Exactly.
Student bodies. We never said white people need not apply, and they've always been open and in fact have oftentimes challenged the law by admitting students who were white. If you had gone to Hampton Institute at the turn of the 20th century, when Booker T. Washington, in the 1880s, when Booker T. Washington was there as a student, and then as a young faculty member, he was in charge of the Native American students.
Exactly.
I mean, there were Native Americans. The principal of Hampton Institute, George Chapman Armstrong, was a white man. So these institutions have always been integrated. When I came to Morehouse College in 1964, my faculty members, the people who were teaching me, were white, they were Black, they were Christian, they were Jew, they were Indian, they were Chinese. And sometimes those are the only places that would hire people of that, from those backgrounds. So these have been very diverse environments. And just because everybody is of the same quote unquote race doesn't mean that they're all the same. So I'd say that there's no self-separation. I have never, in attending these institutions and working in their behalf, seen them as separate. And in fact, they've been in environments where if you walked off of that campus, you wouldn't be you couldn't have a relationship with people of diverse backgrounds. I mean, white people, Jewish people, others. So these are incredible institutions. They're not. So the way they're being described in that construct is inaccurate. And what I do think is that what they have suffered from is this belief by some who don't know them that their day is gone. I remember, you know, you're going to ask me about Reed Hastings and his wife Patty Quillen, and they're giving $40 million to Spelman and $40 million to Morehouse. They also gave $40 million to United Negro College Fund. And, you know, I've known Reed Hastings now for 16 years. We have worked together on the board of the KIPP Foundation,
Right.
helping students of color get a great K through 12 education. Reed, whom I love as a friend, would say in those meetings, Michael, you know, Black colleges are a thing of the past. And I said, Reed, you don't even know what you're talking about. And finally, last year, Reed said, all right, Patty and I want to come visit Morehouse and Spelman. And he comes to Morehouse and Spelman, and he meets with students, and he walks across those campuses, and he talks to kids who had gone to KIPP academies, and they tell them why this is such a powerful educational experience for them. And he says, wow, I just didn't know. I was wrong, and becomes a believer. And you know, both of those institutions, yes, they're single gender institutions, but their faculties are male and female. Their students are from a lot of different backgrounds, and their faculty and their administrations are integrated. They are cosmopolitan environments.
Perfect.
And that's what I think people don't understand.
I have to add something to that. We've done a lot of work at Howard. And so one of the things we learned from Howard was when we were writing some things up, that number one, they were the first American institution to make clear that they were an open admission in terms of there would be no consideration of race or ethnicity. The first American institution to say that. And secondly, and I've never been able to pin this one down, but the first two, I think it was Chinese students admitted to an American university was done by Howard University.
I wouldn't be surprised because even, you know, I'm not a Howard grad. My daughter went.
They want to bring me to bring that up with you, by the way.
and I've spent time, but I've also raised money for Howard. So, you know. So, but what had, I mean, they had
Nepalese.
Nepalese.
Yes.
How did they learn in Nepal about Howard? But
I've asked that.
But what is amazing about that, those students have gotten a great education. They have become embraced at Howard, and they've embraced Howard in return.
And they're ambassadors.
That's, you know, Howard has always had an integrated faculty, you know, and you think about, you know, and people with a range of points of view. I remember when I was at Morehouse in the 60s, and Howard Zinn, the great American historian, who's on the left, was working at Spelman. When he left Spelman, he went to Howard University. He went to Howard. He spent decades at Howard. And these are the institutions which, by the way, during World War II, embraced you know, Jewish refugees, and they went to Tougaloo in Mississippi, Hampton. We still had one of those refugees at Morehouse when I was there.
Wow.
I remember Frau Axelrod. She was teaching.
Wow.
She was teaching German. You know, that's what these institutions are, and so they suffer from being stereotyped and inaccurate.
You brought up the question of philanthropy, and I think you live, breathe, and eat that in some ways. There's been some significant philanthropy of late. In 2020, I think early in 2020, the Karsh Family Foundation gave a $10 million gift to Howard University for students in STEM. In July, we've already mentioned Mackenzie Scott made gifts of $40 million to Howard, $30 million to Hampton, $20 million to Tuskegee and Xavier Universities. Spelman and Morehouse also received an unspecified gift from Ms. Scott, and you yourself, the UNCF, has also received a gift.
Yes, you know, what I'm a little bit surprised because one of the requirements was that you not mention it and that you not give out details.
I will not mention it at all.
You know, but a lot of people didn't read the fine print, but I read it, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay, you can't talk about that. So
there have been a lot of big gifts.
Sure. And so just to make the point, I think the one that really captured my attention was what Mackenzie Scott wrote. She said that she's going to basically give away everything she's got over her lifetime. And she said that the $1.2 billion that she did give was based on a conviction that people who have experienced with inequities are the ones best equipped to design solutions. Now, you've been raising money for much of your adult life. The joke is that Michael Lomax walks over and his hand doesn't come out to be shaken, but to come up as a palm which people will play money. What do you say about the case that their presidents make to persuade someone of means? What is the case to be made today? What is the argument to be made that someone who has earned a fortune by the grace of whatever, or by hard work, whatever reasons they've earned these funds, why should they give to an HBCU?
Look, I'm going to make the argument that these are very effective institutions. One of the big criteria that we use to judge an institution today is, will this have an economic and social impact on the student? We've done a lot of research at UNCF to try to clarify the impact. We know at HBCUs, 75% of our students are low income, Pell eligible. But we also know, and this is research we've done, that within 5 years of graduating, our graduates are earning more than a high school graduate by about $10,000 a year. And within 8 years, they're no longer eligible for Pell. And then within 10 years, they're earning $70,000 a year. We routinely are moving people from poverty to the middle class. And the rate that HBCUs do that social mobility and the consistency of it is very strong. And this is by outside judges and evaluators. So I would say to people, if the goal of education, and I think that, people don't want to be poor. If one of the reasons why people are on this hard journey and doing all this work is so that they can live a reasonably secure economic life, then HBCUs are doing that. And they do it disproportionately for low-income students. So that's really important. And for racial minorities, that's really important. But, I tell you, why do you get an education? You also get an education so that you'll live an enriched life, not just a richer life. You also get an education so that you will be civically engaged, and that is likely to happen as well. And you also do it so that you'll be a leader. I tell my grandchildren, I want you to get an education, yes, so that you'll earn a good living, but I want you to get an education so that you'll live a good life. And I think that we've got to do a better job making the case for the quality of that life and not just the acquisitions that that life will achieve. But let me just say, in the 21st century, the relationship between being able to get an education and then being able to do the work that is going to be highly compensated in the 21st century, the education relationship is very strong. And I'm going to keep telling Black kids, go to college, go to college, go to college.
Well, you touched on it briefly. I think one of the most astonishing things in our experience has been to see the leadership development. You see people who come from homes that really didn't have many means. You see them come into an environment that they've really never experienced, whether it's Spelman or it doesn't matter. And within 3 to 4 years, they're already playing leadership roles. And that, to me,
but that's the power of education. I work with Black colleges, sure, but I also work with a bunch of these charter schools. I'm on the board of KIPP. 80%, 90% of our students are free and reduced lunch. They're low income. And I've sent all my grandchildren to KIPP schools because they're that good. But what I say to my colleagues on the KIPP board is, after a while of getting this great KIPP education, you can't tell which of the kids are poor kids and which of the kids are middle class kids.
Which is called success to me.
Which is called really great success. And because a great education has this impact on, I mean, these kids are elegant. They have elegant minds. They have thought, they have a different sense of their own demeanor and the way they treat themselves and they present themselves in the world. And that's why I spend my life in education, because education transforms. You know, I can't say whether we're going to change all of the racial attitudes in this country. I can't say whether we're going to make economic equality and of opportunity. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that giving someone the opportunity to get a great education is to give them the opportunity to have a greater ownership of their own life and to put themselves on a pathway to personal aspiration and transformation. I wanted that for myself. I want that for my family. And what I want for myself and my family, I want to help others get who don't have the same supports that I had. And that's why education is so important. You know, we want to always make it very practical. Well, if you get a good education, you'll get a good job, you'll earn a lot of money. Yes, and you will earn more money. But I think education transforms us and makes us fuller human beings and enriched human beings and more thoughtful human beings. And I think all of those are qualities that we want to see more of in the world. There's no, I mean, you don't necessarily earn the most money being an educator, but you get the greatest sense of fulfillment by this is a profession like medicine, like the arts, where you're doing something which is creative and meaningful and transformational
And enduring.
And there's a lot of psychic benefit, if not potential to that.
You know, I think you've done this a few times. I think you've said a few things.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your time. You are doing such important work. Keep it up. Stay out of trouble. Do not call us for bail money anymore. We have none.
Thank you very much. And you keep doing these interviews, and I really do appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Innovators, a production of Harris Search Associates. We'll have more insightful conversations with global thought leaders to follow.